Captain Daeho Kim stared at the red warning light flashing on his console. The bridge of the horizon's edge was quiet except for the soft hum of life support systems. His crew of 47 humans had been exploring the outer rim of known space for 6 months. They had discovered 3 new planets and made contact with 2 peaceful alien races. It had been a good mission until now. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal," said Communications Officer Yan Su Bang. Her voice was tight with worry. "Actually, we're receiving multiple distress signals from the same system." Daeho turned his chair toward her station. "Multiple signals?" "Yes, sir. 3 different alien species are all sending emergency broadcasts from the Kepler 442 system. The messages are in different languages, but our translation system is picking up the same basic meaning from all of them." She pressed a button, and the bridge speakers crackled to life. First came a series of clicking sounds that the computer translated into text on the main screen. "The shadow hunters have come. Our fleets are broken. We hide in fear. All hope is lost." The second message was a series of low musical tones. The translation appeared below the first. "Death stalks between the stars. The terror bringers hunt us. No escape, no mercy. All hope is lost." The third message was in a high-pitched whistling language. Again, the same basic meaning appeared on screen. "Darkness devours light. The fearmakers feast on our terror. We cannot fight. We cannot run. All hope is lost." Lieutenant So-Min Park, the ship's specialist in alien life forms, stood up from her science station. "Captain, this is strange. We have records of these 3 species. The Alari are peaceful, traders who avoid conflict. The Brontok are warriors with advanced weapons technology. The Nyx Collective has some of the most powerful shields and defensive systems in this part of the galaxy. And now all 3 are sending the same message," Daeho said slowly. "What could frighten 3 completely different civilizations at the same time?" asked Navigator Minho Seo. Chief Security Officer Jae-wook Choi looked up from his security console. His face was calm, but his dark eyes were alert. "Only one way to find out. We need to investigate." Daeho nodded. "Set course for Kepler 442, maximum speed." The journey took 18 hours. During that time, the distress signals continued. Sometimes they were strong, sometimes weak, but they never stopped completely. The messages became more desperate as time passed. Some spoke of hiding in deep space stations. Others mentioned fleeing to the outer planets of the system. When the horizon's edge dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, the crew saw a sight that made their blood run cold. Debris floated everywhere. Pieces of ships, parts of space stations, fragments of technology they didn't recognize. The system's main trading hub, a massive station that should have housed 50,000 beings, was dark and silent. Only emergency lights flickered along its broken hull. "Scan for life signs," Daeho ordered. Engineering Officer Tae-jun Lee worked at his console. "I'm detecting very faint signals from inside some of the larger debris. Maybe a few hundred survivors, total. Sir, there should be millions of people in this system." "What happened here?" whispered Dr. Haijin Nam, the ship's doctor and psychologist. So-Min was studying the readings from her science station. "Captain, I'm analyzing the damage patterns on these ships and stations. This wasn't done by weapons fire or explosions. Look at these readings." She put the data on the main screen. The metal had been torn apart by massive claws. Hull plating was ripped open like paper. Energy conduits were severed with surgical precision. Whatever had done this was incredibly strong and very smart. "The attack patterns are strange," So-Min continued. "Most of the damage is to engines and communication systems. Life support was left mostly intact. Whatever did this wanted the people inside alive and trapped." A new signal came through the communication system. This one was different, weak and frightened, but in a language their computer could translate immediately. It was from an Alari. "Survivor, please, if anyone can hear this, stay away from Kepler 442. The Vexthul have come. We thought they were just stories told to frighten children. We were wrong. They are real, and they are here. The signal grew stronger as Yansu adjusted the receivers. We are hiding in the cargo hold of a damaged freighter. There are 12 of us left from a crew of 200. We have been here for 6 days. We can hear them moving through the ship sometimes. They don't kill us quickly, they want us to be afraid first. Somin's face went pale. Captain, Vexthul are mentioned in some of the oldest alien databases we've collected. Most species think they're myths. According to legend, they're 12 feet tall with black scales and claws that can cut through any metal. They're supposed to be perfect hunters. What makes them so dangerous? Jawook asked. They don't just hunt for food or territory, Somin said, reading from her files. They hunt for the thrill of fear. The stories say they can sense terror in other beings, and they feed off it somehow. They enjoy making their prey suffer before they kill. The Alari's voice came through the speakers again. They take the strongest fighters first. They took our warriors and made the rest of us watch. Then they took our leaders. Now they toy with us. We can feel their eyes watching us even when we cannot see them. Daiho felt a chill run down his spine. How many of these Vexthul are there? The survivor mentioned seeing 5 of them. Yonsu reported. Just 5 creatures destroyed 3 entire civilizations. Taejun looked up from his engineering station. Captain, we should leave. Our ship isn't built for combat. We're explorers, not warriors. Several crew members nodded in agreement. The evidence of destruction around them was overwhelming. If 5 creatures could do this much damage to advanced alien civilizations, what chance did one human exploration ship have? But Jawook stood up from his security station. There are still people alive down there, hundreds of them. They're trapped and terrified and waiting to die. We can't just leave them. Jawook, I understand how you feel, but we have to think about our own crew, Daeho said. We're not equipped to fight something like this. Then we don't fight, Jawook replied. We rescue who we can and get out, quick and quiet. Dr. Nam looked worried. If these creatures really can sense fear, then just being in the same system with them puts us in danger. Our entire crew will be terrified just knowing they're here. As if summoned by her words, new contacts appeared on the sensor display. 5 large objects were moving toward their ship from the inner system. They moved fast and with purpose. Captain, Minho said, his voice barely above a whisper. Something is coming toward us. 5 contacts moving at incredible speed. The bridge fell silent except for the soft beeping of the sensors. Everyone stared at the screen as the 5 objects grew closer. They were still too far away to see clearly, but their movement patterns were unlike any ship the humans had ever encountered. Sir, Yansu said quietly, I'm receiving a transmission. It's not in any language our computers recognize, but the tone... She paused, listening through her headset. It sounds like laughter. The 5 objects on the sensor screen moved like nothing the humans had ever seen. They twisted and turned through space without using visible engines or thrusters. Their movement was smooth and predatory, like sharks circling prey in dark water. Distance to contacts? Captain Daeho Kim asked, trying to keep his voice steady. 2 million kilometers and closing fast, Navigator Minho Seo replied. His hands shook slightly as he worked his controls. At their current speed, they'll reach us in 20 minutes. Lieutenant Somin Park studied her science readings with growing alarm. Captain, these aren't ships in the traditional sense. The sensor readings are strange. It's like they're part biological and part machine. I've never seen anything like this. On the main screen, the 5 objects grew larger as they approached. They looked like massive black teardrops with razor-sharp edges. Strange energy patterns flowed across their surfaces like living lightning. Each one was easily 3 times the size of the horizon's edge. Incoming transmission, Communications Officer Yeon-Soo Bang announced. It's the same signal as before, but stronger now. The sound that filled the bridge was definitely laughter, but not like any laughter humans had ever heard. It was deep and cold and hungry. It spoke of centuries of hunting and killing. Several crew members stepped back from their stations instinctively. Then the laughter stopped and a voice spoke in perfect English. Interesting. New prey in our hunting ground. We have studied your communications, humans. We know your language now. We know your fears. The voice was like grinding metal mixed with silk. It promised pain and terror with every word. Captain Deho stepped forward. This is Captain Kim of the Earth vessel Horizon's Edge. We are here to help survivors of your attacks. We mean you. No harm. The laughter returned, louder this time. Harm? You speak of harm to us? We are Vexthul. We are the shadow between the stars. We are the fear that lives in every thinking mind. You cannot harm what you cannot understand. We understand enough, Chief Security Officer Jae-wook Choi said quietly. You're bullies who pick on people weaker than you. The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at Jae-wook. He stood calmly at his security station, his face showing no fear or worry. His comment had just insulted the most dangerous predators in the galaxy. The Vexthul voice returned, but now it sounded curious instead of amused. Curious. One among you speaks without the taste of fear. We will study this anomaly before we feast. Engineering Officer Tae-jun Lee looked up from his console with panic in his eyes. Captain, they're doing something to our ship. I'm reading strange energy patterns throughout all our systems. It's like they're scanning us from the inside. Out. Dr. Hye-jin Nam suddenly grabbed her head and stumbled backward. Something's wrong. I can feel something in my mind. Images. Terrible images. Other crew members began showing signs of distress. Some fell to their knees, holding their heads. Others backed against the walls with wide, terrified eyes. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop 10 degrees. They're projecting fear directly into our minds, So-min gasped, fighting to stay at her station. It's some kind of psychic attack. The images came faster now. Each crew member saw their worst nightmares made real. They saw themselves dying in horrible ways. They saw their families in danger. They saw the Horizon's Edge torn apart with everyone inside screaming. One by one, the crew members collapsed or ran from the bridge in terror. The artificial fear was too strong to resist. Even Captain Deho found himself backing toward the exit, his heart pounding with unreasonable panic. But Jae-wook remained at his station. He watched his crewmates suffer, and his jaw tightened with anger, but he showed no fear. The psychic attack that was paralyzing everyone else seemed to slide off him like water off steel. Fascinating, the Vexthul voice said. The others taste of terror, but this one tastes of something else. Something we have not encountered in many centuries of hunting. Jae-wook looked directly at the main screen where the 5 alien ships were now clearly visible. I've already lost everything that mattered to me. You can't frighten someone who has nothing left to lose. 2 years ago, Jae-wook had been stationed at Titan Colony when the mining disaster happened. An explosion in the deep shafts had killed 3,000 people, including his wife and daughter. He had been off-world on a supply run. When he returned, there was nothing left but wreckage and graves. Since then, death held no terror for him. He had volunteered for the most dangerous missions, hoping to find some purpose in his empty life. Fear was a luxury he could no longer afford. The psychic attack intensified. The remaining crew members on the bridge screamed and fled. Even Captain Deho was forced to retreat to the corridor outside, his mind overwhelmed by artificial terror. Only Jae-wook remained, standing alone on the bridge of a ship under attack by the galaxy's most feared predators. You interest us, human, the Vexthul voice said. We are Morveth the Endless, pack leader of this hunting group. In 400 years of feeding on fear, we have never met prey that does not taste of terror. You will make an excellent final hunt. Good, Jae-wook replied calmly. I was getting bored. He began working at his security console, checking weapons, systems, and defensive measures. The ship wasn't built for combat, but it had some basic defenses. More importantly, Jae-wook knew every corridor, every maintenance shaft, every emergency system on the ship. You prepare to fight us? Morveth sounded amused. We who have destroyed civilizations fear no single prey animal. Maybe that's your problem, Jae-wook said without looking up from his console. You've gotten soft hunting creatures that can't fight back. The 5 Vexthal ships moved closer, taking positions around the horizon's edge. They moved with the confident ease of predators who had never faced real resistance. "We will board your vessel soon," Morveth announced. "We will hunt you through your own corridors. We will make you understand fear before the end." Jaywuk finished his preparations and looked up at the screen. For the first time since the attack began, he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "You're welcome to try." In the corridor outside the bridge, Captain Deho fought to control his mind against the waves of artificial terror. Through the open bridge door, he could see Jaywuk standing alone, calm and ready for battle. For the first time since the attack began, Deho felt something other than fear. He felt hope. The hunt was about to begin, but the Vexthal had made one critical mistake. They had never hunted prey that hunted back. The first Vexthal boarded the horizon's edge through the main cargo bay. It moved through the ship's corridors like liquid shadow, its 12-foot frame barely making a sound despite its massive size. Black scales covered its body like armor, and its claws could cut through steel as easily as paper. This was Velkar the Swift, the pack's scout and tracker. For over 2 centuries, it had been the first to enter prey vessels, spreading terror and confusion before the main hunt began. It expected to find cowering humans hiding in locked rooms, begging for mercy that would never come. Instead, it found empty corridors and silence. Velkar extended its senses, searching for the familiar taste of fear that always filled prey ships. There was terror present, yes, but it was distant and muffled. Most of the humans had retreated to the ship's center, probably locked in their quarters or safe rooms. But there was something else. A cold presence moving through the ship's maintenance areas. Something that tasted of determination and anger. Instead of fear, the Vexthal had never encountered anything like it. Velkar moved deeper into the ship, its claws scraping softly against the metal walls. It was heading toward the bridge where the strange, fearless human waited. But as it passed through a junction between 2 corridors, something unexpected happened. The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a second later, but that second of darkness was enough. When the red emergency lights came on, Velkar found itself standing in a corridor that had been changed. Support beams had been cut and repositioned. The ceiling had been lowered with makeshift barriers. The wide hunting ground had become a narrow trap. "Welcome aboard," a calm voice said from speakers hidden in the walls. "I hope you enjoy your stay." Velkar spun around, looking for the source of the voice, but Jaywuk was already moving through the maintenance shafts above. He had spent the last hour preparing the ship for war, turning familiar corridors into hunting grounds where he held every advantage. The Vexthal tried to move forward, but the narrow space made it awkward. Its massive frame was designed for wide-open areas where it could use its speed and reach. In the cramped, modified corridor, it had to move slowly and carefully. That was exactly what Jaywuk had planned. He dropped through a ceiling panel behind Velkar, landing silently in the corridor. In his hands was a makeshift weapon, a plasma cutter normally used for ship repairs. He had modified it to deliver a more focused beam. Velkar's superior senses detected him immediately, and the creature spun around with incredible speed. But the narrow corridor worked against it. Its claws scraped against the walls as it tried to turn, giving Jaywuk the split second he needed. The plasma beam cut deep into Velkar's side, burning through the black scales that had protected it for centuries. The Vexthal screamed, a sound like breaking glass mixed with dying wind. It had never felt real pain before. Jaywuk was already moving, rolling under the creature's wild swipe and coming up near the corridor's emergency controls. He slammed, his fist on the gravity manipulation panel. The ship's artificial gravity reversed in that section. Velkar, suddenly weighing nothing, crashed into the ceiling with bone-crushing force. Before it could recover, Jaywuk restored normal gravity. The 12-foot predator slammed back down onto the metal floor. Jaywuk stood over the stunned creature and looked into its alien eyes. "You picked the wrong ship to hunt." He fired the plasma cutter again, this time directly into Velkar's head. The first Vexthal in over 400 years died on the deck of a human exploration vessel. In their ship surrounding the horizon's edge, the other 4 Vexthul felt Velkar's death through their psychic connection. The sensation was so shocking that Morveth the Endless actually stumbled backward from his control station. "Impossible," whispered Thaxmor the Eternal. "No prey has ever killed one of us. The human fights like we do," observed Zeknul the Mindrender. "It uses traps and ambush tactics. It thinks like a predator." Morveth's ancient mind struggled to process what had happened. The Vexthul had evolved to be perfect hunters of fearful prey. They had never developed defenses against something that hunted them back. "This changes nothing," Morveth declared, but his voice lacked its usual confidence. "We board together. We overwhelm this anomaly with numbers." But the pack leader was wrong. This changed everything. Throughout the ship, the human crew had felt the psychic scream when Velkar died. The artificial terror that had been crushing their minds suddenly lessened. Dr. Heejin Nam was the first to understand what had happened. "One of them is dead," she told Captain Deho as they huddled in the medical bay. Jaywuk killed one of them. The news spread quickly through the ship's communication system. If one human could kill a Vexthul, then maybe they weren't as invincible as everyone believed. The crew began to emerge from their hiding places. Lieutenant So-Min Park made her way back to her science station and began analyzing the data from Velkar's death. What she discovered was remarkable. "Captain," she reported over the ship's intercom, "the Vexthul's psychic abilities seemed to be connected to their confidence. When one of them died, the fear projection from the others became weaker. They're not as sure of themselves anymore." Engineering Officer Tae-Jun Lee reached his station and began working on the ship's systems. "If we can help Jaywuk, maybe we can kill more of them. Each death should make the rest easier to fight." Communications Officer Yeon Soo Bang re-established contact with the surviving aliens in the system. "This is Horizon's Edge to all survivors. We have killed one of the Vexthul. Repeat, one of the Shadow Hunters is dead. Resistance is possible." The response was immediate and electric. Voices in dozens of languages began flooding the communication channels. The hopeless survivors suddenly had something they hadn't felt in months: hope. On the bridge, Jaywuk prepared for the next phase of the battle. He could sense the remaining 4 Vexthul moving toward his ship. They were angry now, and angry predators made mistakes. He activated the ship's internal sensors and began tracking their approach. They were boarding at multiple points, trying to overwhelm him with numbers. But the ship was his territory now, and he knew every inch of it. "Come on, then," he said quietly, checking his weapons and traps. "Let's see how tough you really are when the prey fights back." In the depths of space around them, alien survivors began powering up their hidden ships and weapons. The Vexthul had never faced organized resistance before. They had always been the hunters. Now, for the first time in their species' history, they were about to learn what it felt like to be prey. The remaining 3 Vexthul entered the ship at different points, abandoning their careful hunting methods for the first time in centuries. Anger and confusion drove them forward. They wanted to kill the human who had done the impossible. Thaxmor, the Eternal, came through the engine room. Zeknul the Mindrender entered near the crew quarters. Morveth the Endless, the pack leader, chose the bridge as his entry point. They planned to corner Jaywuk between them and tear him apart with their claws. But Jaywuk was no longer thinking like prey. He was thinking like a hunter. In the 2 hours since killing Velkar, he had turned the entire ship into a weapon. Every corridor had been modified. Every room had become a trap. The familiar exploration vessel was now a maze of death designed for creatures who had never learned to fear their environment. Thaxmor moved through the engine room with growing frustration. The human scent was everywhere, but the actual prey was nowhere to be found. The massive Vexthul had lived for over 600 years and had never failed to track down quarry before. What Thaxmor didn't know was that Jaywuk had been using the ship's air recycling system to spread his scent throughout the vessel. Every vent, every corridor, every room now smelled like the human. The creature's superior tracking abilities were useless. Thaxmor approached the main fusion reactor that powered the ship. The energy signatures were confusing his senses, making it even harder to locate his prey. As he moved closer to investigate, he stepped on what looked like a loose floor panel. The panel was actually a pressure plate that Jae-wook had rigged to the reactor's containment field controls. The magnetic containment field that kept the fusion reaction safely contained suddenly expanded outward in a controlled burst. For just 2 seconds, the field extended beyond the reactor chamber and into the engine room. Thaxmore was caught in the magnetic field with several tons of metal engine components. The field slammed him against the reactor housing with enough force to crack his black scales. Before he could recover, the field reversed, pulling him in the opposite direction and smashing him into the far wall. Jae-wook dropped from a maintenance shaft above as Thaxmore struggled to stand. In his hands was a container of acid normally used to clean the ship's hull. He had concentrated it into something much stronger. 600 years old? Jae-wook said as he poured the acid over the creature's wounded scales. Time to retire. Thaxmore screamed as the acid burned through his ancient armor and into his flesh. He tried to grab Jae-wook, but the human was already moving. A few seconds later, the fusion reactor's coolant system activated, flooding the engine room with supercooled gas. The combination of acid burns and extreme cold was too much for even a Vexthul to survive. Thaxmore the Eternal died in the engine room of a human ship, killed by modified cleaning supplies and life support systems. The psychic scream of his death reached the other 2 Vexthul immediately. Zeknul the Mindrender felt a strange new emotion creeping into his ancient mind. For the first time in his 300-year life, he felt something that might have been fear. Meanwhile, near the crew quarters, Dr. Hye-jin Nam was helping injured crew members when she heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Heavy footsteps that didn't belong to any human. She quickly activated the ship's intercom system. Jae-wook, one of them is near the medical bay. I know, came the calm reply from the speakers. Everyone stay exactly where you are. Don't open any doors no matter what you hear. Zeknul reached the medical bay and tried to force the door open. His claws scraped against the reinforced metal, but the door held. Inside, he could hear the humans whimpering in fear. The familiar sound should have excited him, but instead it felt hollow and meaningless. 2 of his pack brothers were dead. How was that possible? He decided to abandon the door and hunt for the killer instead. As he moved down the corridor, he noticed something strange. The walls were covered with what looked like medical equipment. IV tubes, heart monitors, surgical tools, all arranged in complex patterns. What Zeknul didn't realize was that he was looking at the ship's automated medical system, reprogrammed by Jae-wook and Dr. Nam working together. The decorations on the walls were actually a network of injection systems designed to deliver medicine to patients, but they weren't filled with medicine anymore. As Zeknul walked past, dozens of hidden injectors fired simultaneously. They were loaded with a powerful anesthetic that Dr. Nam had modified to work on alien biology. The drug was designed to shut down the nervous systems of wounded creatures during emergency surgery. For a human, 1 dose would cause unconsciousness. For a Vexthul, it took 30 doses fired at once to have any effect. But 30 doses was exactly what Jae-wook had prepared. Zeknul stumbled as the drug hit his system. His superior reflexes slowed to normal speeds. His enhanced senses became clouded and confused. He was still dangerous, but no longer superhuman. Jae-wook appeared at the end of the corridor, armed with the ship's emergency defense turrets. He had removed them from their wall mountings and connected them to a portable power supply. The weapons were designed to repel boarding parties, but they had never been used as personal weapons before. 3 down, Jae-wook said as he opened fire. 1 to go. The defense turrets fired concentrated energy beams that burned through Zeknul's weakened defenses. The Mindrender fell to the deck, his body smoking from multiple wounds. As the 3rd Vexthul died, something unprecedented happened throughout the Kepler 442 system. The psychic terror that had paralyzed 3 entire civilizations suddenly lifted completely. On hidden stations and damaged ships, alien survivors felt their minds clear for the first time in months. The overwhelming fear that had made resistance impossible was gone. In its place was something the Vexthul had never expected their prey to feel: anger. Ilari trading ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields powered up their engines. Brontok warriors who had been cowering in bunkers picked up their weapons. The Nyx Collective activated defense systems they had thought were useless against the shadow hunters. Throughout the system, the prey species began coordinating their efforts. They shared information about Vexthul weaknesses. They planned joint attacks. For the first time in galactic history, the hunted were organizing to hunt their hunters. But the most dangerous hunter was still aboard the horizon's edge. Morveth, the Endless, stood on the ship's bridge, his 400-year-old mind struggling to understand what had happened. 3 of his pack brothers were dead. 3 perfect predators had been killed by a single human using nothing but ship's equipment and clever thinking. Impossible, he whispered to himself. We are Vexthul. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. But the evidence was all around. Him. His pack was dead, and he was alone on a ship controlled by something he had never encountered before. Prey that refused to be prey. The final hunt was about to begin. Morveth the Endless stood alone on the bridge of the horizon's edge, surrounded by the control stations where terrified humans had fled hours earlier. His massive frame cast long shadows in the emergency lighting. For 400 years he had been the perfect predator. Now, for the first time in his ancient life, he was the one being hunted. The ship around him was silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. But Morveth could sense movement in the walls, in the floors, in the ceiling above. The human was everywhere and nowhere, moving through the ship like a ghost. Human, Morveth called out, his voice echoing through the empty bridge. You have killed my pack brothers. This is impossible. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. Jaywook's voice came from speakers hidden throughout the bridge. Maybe you were, but that was before you met someone who had nothing left to lose. You cannot hide from me forever, Morveth snarled. I will find you. I will make you understand fear before I kill you. I'm not hiding, Jaywook replied calmly. I'm preparing. The lights on the bridge suddenly went out completely. Morveth extended his enhanced senses, searching for his prey in the darkness. But the human's scent was everywhere, carried through the air vents throughout the ship. His heartbeat was masked by the rhythm of the ship's engines. Even his body heat was hidden by the warm electronics surrounding them. When the lights came back on, the bridge had changed. The control stations had been moved to create narrow pathways between them. Support cables hung from the ceiling like a web. The floor was covered with loose metal plates that would make noise when stepped on. The wide, open bridge had become a maze designed to limit movement and create choke points. And standing at the center of the maze was Jaywook. He wore makeshift armor built from pieces of the ship's hull plating. In his hands was a weapon that hadn't existed an hour ago, a combination of the ship's plasma cutter, a gravity manipulator, and several emergency power cells. It looked crude, but Morveth's enhanced senses could detect the dangerous energy flowing through it. 400 years, Jaywook said, looking directly at the massive alien. 400 years of picking on people who couldn't fight back. Today you learn what happens when you hunt something that hunts back. Morveth tried to project fear directly into the human's mind, pouring centuries of psychic power into the attack. He showed Jaywook visions of death and torture, images of loved ones suffering, nightmares that had broken the minds of entire civilizations. Jaywook didn't even blink. I already lived through my worst nightmare, he said quietly. You can't show me anything worse than losing my family. The Vexthul pack leader felt something he had never experienced before. Complete helplessness. His greatest weapon was useless against this human. For the first time in 4 centuries, Morveth was truly afraid. The final battle began. Morveth charged forward with incredible speed, his claws extended to tear through the human's makeshift armor. But the narrow pathways forced him to approach, in a straight line, exactly as Jaywook had planned. The human's improvised weapon fired a focused gravity pulse that slammed into Morveth's chest, sending the 12-foot creature crashing into the captain's chair. Before the Vexthul could recover, Jaywook activated the emergency atmospheric controls. The air on the bridge suddenly became thin and cold, like the atmosphere of a high mountain. For a human, it was uncomfortable, but survivable. For a Vexthul, used to the thick, warm air of their homeworld, it was disorienting and painful. Morveth struggled to breathe as he tried to stand. His ancient body, perfectly evolved for hunting in comfortable conditions, was not designed for environmental extremes. Jaywook had turned the very air into a weapon. "You understand now," Jaywook said as he moved carefully through his maze of obstacles. "You've been hunting prey for so long that you forgot how to fight a real opponent." The Vexthul leader made one final desperate attack, leaping over the control stations with the last of his strength. His claws raked across Jaywook's armor, leaving deep scratches in the metal plating. But Jaywook had been ready for this. As Morveth landed, the human triggered his final trap. The loose metal plates on the floor were actually connected to the ship's main power grid. Electrical current flowed through them, designed to stun boarding parties. For a human wearing insulated boots, the current was harmless. For a massive Vexthul with claws touching the metal deck, it was devastating. Morveth, convulsed as electricity coursed through his body. His perfect scales, designed to protect against claws and energy weapons, conducted the current directly into his vital organs. Jaywook stood over the fallen predator and looked into eyes that had seen 4 centuries of hunting and killing. "This is for everyone you terrorized. This is for everyone who died afraid because of you." He fired his improvised weapon one final time. The gravity pulse crushed Morveth the Endless against the deck plating with enough force to crack the ship's hull beneath him. The last Vexthul was dead. Throughout the Kepler 4-on-4-2 system, the psychic silence that followed was deafening. For months, 3 entire civilizations had lived under a blanket of supernatural terror. Now that terror was gone forever, replaced by something unprecedented: hope. Alien ships emerged from hiding places throughout the system. Ilari traders, Brontok warriors, and Nyx collective vessels all converged on the horizon's edge. They came not as refugees but as beings who had witnessed something impossible. A single human had killed 5 Vexthul, using nothing but determination and clever thinking. Captain Daeho Kim returned to the bridge to find Jaywook sitting quietly in the captain's chair, staring out at the stars through the main view screen. His makeshift armor was damaged and his improvised weapon lay broken on the deck. "How did you know you could win?" Daeho asked. Jaywook was quiet for a long moment. "I didn't know I could win," he finally said. "I just knew I wasn't going to lose without making them pay for every second of it." News of the battle spread quickly through galactic communication networks. The Vexthul, the shadow hunters who had terrorized civilizations for millennia, were not invincible. They could be beaten by anyone brave enough to fight back. More importantly, word spread about humanity, the species that had faced the galaxy's apex predators and won through nothing but determination and refusal to give up. Throughout the galaxy, the Vexthul packs that had been preparing new hunts suddenly found themselves avoiding certain systems. For the first time in their species' history, they began to feel what their prey had always felt: fear. And in the depths of space, human exploration ships continued their missions, no longer just as explorers and diplomats, but as protectors of those who could not protect themselves. The galaxy had learned that there was something more dangerous than an apex predator, a species that refused to accept the role of prey.